The first child died at dawn. Amini heard the wail cut through the mist rising from the rice paddies, a sound so sharp it seemed to slice the morning in two. She was at the communal well, the great stone-ringed heart of Kiriyama village, lowering her clay pot on a rope of braised vine. The water below was a dark watching eye. It had tasted faintly of metal yesterday. Today it smelled of nothing at all, which was worse. She pulled the heavy pot up, muscles in her slender arms corded with the effort. The wail came again, closer now, morphing into words. My boy is cold." By the time Amini hurried to the small mud brick house at the village edge, a crowd had gathered. Little Kofi lay on a mat, his body rigid, lips tinged blue. His mother, Eshe, rocked back and forth, her cries rhythmic and terrible. The village healer, old Bennu, crouched beside the body, pressing a withered hand to the boy's neck. He shook his head, his eyes finding Amini's in the doorway. They were not kind eyes. "His stomach is hard as a gourd," Bennu announced, his voice gravelly with authority. "Full of poison." A gasp rippled through the room. Poison. The word hung in the air, thicker than the smell of grief and dust. "The well," someone whispered. "He fetched water last night." All eyes swung to Amini, as if she had carried the poison in with her. She was the well-keeper's daughter. Her late father, Obasi, had maintained the well for 40 years, taught her its moods, its depths, the sweet taste of its best water. Since his passing 2 monsoons ago, the task had fallen to her, a woman and an unmarried one at 22. A presumption, some muttered. An ill omen, said others. Amini clutched her own pot of water. "The water, it tasted strange yesterday. I told people not to drink it. I said to wait." "You told a few," said Jumoki, the village headman's wife, her arms crossed. "You whispered it like a secret. Why not shout it?" "I went to every house on the west side. I was going to the east this morning." "A convenient warning after the damage is done," rumbled Headman Dyke, emerging from the crowd. He was a broad man who carried his authority like a physical weight. "Bennu, check the well." The procession back to the well was a somber parade. Bennu made a show of lowering a gourd, taking a sip, swishing it in his mouth. He spat it onto the dry earth, where it darkened the soil in a sinister blot. "Tainted," he pronounced. "A foulness is in it." Panic broke then. Mothers clutched children, men cursed, and then a new cry went up. From the other side of the village, another family was screaming. By noon, 3 were dead. 2 children and an old man. All had drunk from the well the previous evening. The village descended into a frenzied fear. Buckets of salt and crushed neem leaves were thrown down the well, a futile attempt to purge the unseen evil. Theories flew like poisoned darts, a cursed runoff from the hills, a dead animal rotting in the depths. But under the fear, a darker current flowed, seeking a channel for its rage. It found one in the evening, at the meeting under the great baobab tree. Amini stood before the assembled village, the setting sun painting the faces of her neighbors in hues of orange and judgment. She felt smaller than she ever had, the weight of their suspicion, a physical pressure. "My father taught me the well," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "I would never harm it. I loved it as he did." "Your father was a good man," Headman Dyke said, not unkindly, which was worse. "But you are not your father. A woman's heart can be a tangled root. Perhaps there is resentment. You have no husband. You live alone in your father's house, tending a well that should be a man's duty. Perhaps a bitterness has seeped from you into the water." The absurdity of it stole her breath. My bitterness? How? Would I poison the children I played with? Would I kill old man Tibu, who gave me mangoes when I was small? "The how is not for us to know," intoned Anu. He held up a small leather-wrapped bundle. Inside lay a handful of withered, dark berries Amini recognized with a jolt of ice in her veins. Unsumba berries, rare, growing deep in the forbidden forest, highly toxic. Her mother had died of a fever when she was 10. The village rumors, never quite extinguished, had whispered that Obasi's wife had known too much about herbs, had dabbled in things women shouldn't. Found in your home, Amini, hidden in a crack in the wall by your hearth. A roaring filled her ears. She had never seen those berries before. That is a lie. Planted. Who would plant such a thing? Jamokwe asked, her voice syrupy with false pity. Unless they feared what you might do. The logic was a closed, suffocating circle. Her unusual position, the hidden poison, the timing of her warnings, the legacy of a mother whispered to be a witch, it coalesced into a terrible, collective certainty. Headman Dyke's face was grim. The well is life, Amini. You have poisoned life itself. The evil must be removed from the source. The sentence was not death. Kirima was not a murderous village. Their punishment was exile. You will leave before the next moonrise. You will take nothing that belongs to Kirima. You will walk west and never return. Your shadow must never again fall upon our fields, or our thirst will be upon your head. That night, under a cold, watchful moon, Amini was escorted to the village boundary. She wore only her thin cotton dress. They let her keep her mother's simple bronze bracelet, the one heirloom she had. They gave her a small gourd of water, not from the well, but from a muddy buffalo wallow, and a handful of millet. Eshe, the mother of dead Kofi, stood at the front of the silent crowd. Her eyes were not full of vengeful fire, but of a hollow, accepting grief. That was the worst of it. They genuinely believed she had done this. As Amini took her first step onto the unknown path, Jamokwe called out, her voice sharp in the stillness, "Do not curse us as you go, poison maker. The land itself will reject you." Amini did not look back. She walked. The sounds of the village, the faint cry of a baby, the bark of a dog, faded behind her, swallowed by the immense, whispering darkness of the savannah. The weight of their belief was a stone in her belly. But under the terror, under the crushing injustice, a new feeling ignited, a tiny, fierce coal of defiance. She had not poisoned the well. Someone had, and they had let her take the blame. The city did not have one well. It had 1,000. It had pipes that ran like metal veins into buildings, taps that gushed water at a twist, and a great, muddy river that curled through it like a tired brown serpent. To Amini, arriving after weeks of walking, begging, and surviving on wit and desperation, it was an ocean of indifference. She called herself Mina now, shedding the name that tasted of accusation. She found work first as a scullery maid, her hands raw in soapy water that others took for granted. She slept in a crowded, lice-ridden dormitory with other migrant girls. At night, while they whispered of village sweethearts or city dreams, she lay still, seeing the blue-tinged lips of Kofi, hearing the finality of Headman Dyke's decree. The memory was her bedrock. It was also her poison. It fueled her when exhaustion threatened to swallow her. She learned to read numbers, then letters, by bribing a street scribe with stolen bread. She moved from scullery to shopgirl, her keen eyes and quiet efficiency noticed by a Lebanese trader named Mr. Haddad. He ran a bustling import business, textiles, spices, small machinery. Mina saw the patterns in his chaos. She taught herself to keep his books in order, her meticulous notes in her newfound language saving him from several shady deals. He, in turn, saw a sharp, untrusting intelligence in her eyes. He made her his assistant. In his employ, she met Kwame. He was an engineer, educated abroad, who came to consult on a generator. He had a laugh that felt like solid ground, and eyes that saw her. Not the maid or the assistant, but the woman within, haunted, resilient, and fiercely smart. He courted her with a gentle persistence that disarmed her walls. He spoke of building things, of clean water systems for rural towns, of a modern Ghana rising. She wanted to tell him her truth, but the shame of exile was a cloak she could not remove. She told him she was an orphan from a village destroyed by a flood, a half-truth that drowned in its own omission. They married. With Mr. Haddad's blessing and a small loan, they started a business. Kwame's engineering brilliance and Mina's ruthless logistical mind were a perfect alchemy. They began with water pumps, simple, efficient devices for farms, then larger filtration units for schools and clinics. Their company, Nsupa, Good Water, grew. It became synonymous with reliability, with integrity. Mina insisted on it. Every contract was ironclad, every promise was kept. She developed a reputation as a formidable negotiator, a woman whose yes was solid and whose no was a cliff face. She trusted slowly and never fully. The world, in her experience, was a place where wells could be poisoned and the innocent blamed. They had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Amma, the eldest, inherited her father's open heart and her mother's analytical mind. Kofi, she had flinched when naming him but insisted on it, reclaiming the sound, was all charisma and big dreams. The youngest, Yao, was the quiet observer, the artist. Mina loved them with a ferocity that was born of having had everything taken away. She filled their home with books, with music, with the clean, running water that was the foundation of their fortune. She told them stories of a wise grandfather who cared for a village well, but she never spoke of Karima. That name was buried deep, a fossil of pain. Yet it shaped her. She funded girls' schools in remote areas, specifically targeting water and sanitation education. The well is the heart, she would tell her project managers. If the heart is poisoned by ignorance, the whole body suffers. Her staff saw profound metaphor. Only she knew it was literal memory. Kwame sensed the shadow. One night, years into their marriage, after a successful bid for a major municipal contract, he found her on their balcony, staring at the city lights as if they were distant, hostile fires. "You carry a weight, my love," he said softly, handing her a glass of water. "You have built us a palace, but sometimes you live in a hut in your mind." She looked at the glass, the water clear and perfect. She thought of the muddy gourd given to her at the village edge. A tear, hot and surprising, traced her cheek. "They took my name," she whispered, the words torn from a place long locked. "They said I poisoned the water. They sent me away with nothing." The story spilled out then, in fractured, painful pieces. The dead children, the unsumba berries, the walk into nothingness. Kwame listened, his hand gripping hers, his face a storm of anger and heartbreak. When she finished, trembling, he pulled her close. "Their well was poisoned long before you, my love," he murmured into her hair. "Poisoned by small minds and fear. You are the cleanest water I have ever known." His forgiveness was a baptism, but it did not erase the past. It made it a shared, quiet sorrow. Time flowed. Kwame passed away, peaceful but too soon, leaving a void in her world that no success could fill. The children grew, taking over Nsupa, expanding it into a Pan-African conglomerate. Amana ran it with cool competence. Kofi was the visionary, always chasing the next big project. Yao designed the beautiful, functional water access points that became their brand's signature. Mina, now Nana Mina to her grandchildren, receded from daily operations but remained the silent compass. Her office in their Accra headquarters was a serene, plant-filled space with one simple framed quotation on the wall. Quote, "Water is the first medicine. Do not defile the healer." She thought her past was just that, past, a fossil, preserved but inert. Then, one Tuesday, The letter came. It was formal, on cheap curling paper. The script was labored. It was addressed to the founders, Nsupa International. To the most honorable owners, we write to you from Kirima village in the eastern region. We are in a time of great suffering. Our river has dried for the 3rd year. The old well, the only one that remains, is failing. The water is salty and gives our children the runs. The crops wither. We are begging for your mercy. We hear you bring water to the poor. We are poor now in water, which is to be poor in life. Please, in the name of God and humanity, help us dig a new well. We will pay in labor and in eternal gratitude. Signed, the elders and people of Kirima. Amina, she allowed herself her full name in the privacy of her mind, felt the room tilt. The paper in her hands hissed like a snake. The past was not a fossil. It was a seed buried deep, and this letter was the first drop of rain. She did not move for an hour. Memories, vivid and toxic, flooded her. The taste of fear, the feel of the rough vine on her palms, the sight of Eshe rocking, the sound of Jamoke's voice labeling her poison maker. A fire banked for 45 years stirred in her chest. It was not the heat of anger alone. It was the white-hot forge of a long-deferred justice. She called her children to her that evening. Amma, Kofi, and Yao found their mother in her garden, tending her roses with an unusual intensity. The letter lay on a stone bench beside her. "We got the strangest request today," Amma began, her businesslike demeanor softened by concern for her mother's quiet mood. "A village called Kirima. Their plea is heartbreaking. I've already had the logistics team do a preliminary survey. The aquifer is there, but deep. It's a perfect project for our new solar-powered drill. We could have clean water flowing for them in 6 weeks. It would be good PR, but more than that, it's the right thing to do." "Kirima," Mina repeated, the word like a stone in her mouth. She put down her trowel, wiped her hands slowly on her apron. "Sit." She told them, not the abbreviated version she had told Kwame, but the whole, unvarnished truth, the scourging details of the deaths, the terrifying speed of the accusation, the vile theater of Banu's discovery, the cold, communal verdict, the walk into the wilderness with a gourd of mud. She spoke of the loneliness that ate at bones, the fear that was a constant companion, the sheer struggle to become a person again after being declared a monster. Her children listened, their faces moving from shock to horror to a swelling, furious grief. Kofi slammed his hand on the bench. "Animals! I'll burn that village to the ground." "No," Mina said, her voice calm now, a deep, still pool. "That is not the way." "But Ma," Amma whispered, tears in her eyes, "they destroyed you." "They tried," Mina corrected. "They failed. Look at me. Look at you. Look at what we have built from the nothing they gave me. Their poison did not take root. I let it fuel me, but I never let it define me. Until now." "What will you do?" Yao asked, his artist's soul sensing a composition coming together. Mina picked up the letter again. "They are not begging Amini, the exiled girl. They are begging the wealthy, faceless benefactors. They have no idea who I am. That is their final tragic mistake." She looked at her children, her gaze unwavering. "We will not send a drill team. We will send a reply." The reply from Nsupa was delivered by a sleek corporate courier to the bewildered headman of Kirima, now Headman Cheek, son of Dyke, who was long dead. It was a single, elegant box. Inside, nestled in foam, was a laboratory-grade glass vial filled with crystal-clear water. Tied to it with a simple thread was a note. The villagers crowded around as Cheek, his reading glasses perched on his nose, read it aloud. "To the elders and people of Kirima, we have received your plea. Enclosed is a vial of clean water, It is a symbol of what you seek. Before we can bring you water for your bodies, you must cleanse your village of a deeper poison. 45 years ago, your well was poisoned. A young woman named Amini, daughter of Obasi the well-keeper, was falsely accused and exiled for this crime. The real poison was never in the water. It was in the lies that were spoken, in the fear that was wielded as a weapon, in the tongues that condemned an innocent to die a social death. I always knew the real poison was your tongues. True water cannot flow where truth is buried. If you wish for our aid, you must first do this: assemble the village, speak the name Amini aloud, admit publicly and collectively the wrong that was done to her. Only when you have cleansed that well of memory may you write to us again. Sincerely, the founders of Unsupa. Silence descended upon the gathering. For the older ones, it was a thunderclap from a clear sky. Faces paled. Jumoke, now a shrunken, bitter widow, let out a strangled cry. Old Bennu was dead, but his grandson, a man of 50, looked at his feet. Eshe, Kofi's mother, now bent with age, began to weep silently, the grief fresh as yesterday. The younger generations were confused, then outraged. What is this? A story? It is not a story, croaked an ancient voice. It was Tibu's widow, nearly blind. I was there. The girl? Her eyes. She did not have guilty eyes. But Bennu was so sure. And Dyke? He wanted the trouble gone. A murmur grew. Secrets, long held in the dusty silence of shame, began to tumble out. A man remembered seeing Bennu coming from the forbidden forest around that time. A woman recalled Jumoke's fierce jealousy of Obasi's family, their small but sturdy house. The pieces, ignored for decades, began to form a different picture. It was Eshe who spoke, her voice cracking the quiet. My Kofi died. My heart died with him. We needed someone to blame. She was alone. She was different. It was easy. We poisoned ourselves, not with berries, but with our own cowardice. A great collective shame washed over Karima. It was more acute than thirst. Headman Cheek, a man who wanted to be better than his father, felt the weight of inherited sin. He called a meeting under the same baobab tree. There was no trial this time. There was a confession. Not of a crime against the well, but of a crime against a soul. They spoke Amini's name. They admitted their complicity, their rush to judgment, their collective sin of exile. The young people listened, a history they never knew painting their elders in a harsh new light. A letter was written, not on curling paper, but on a clean, white sheet purchased from a traveling salesman. It was signed by every adult in the village. To the founders of Nusupa, and to Amini, daughter of Obasi, wherever she may be, we have done as you asked. We have assembled. We have spoken her name. We admit the wrong. It was our fear, our malice, our smallness that poisoned our community. We live with the consequences every day in our dry fields and sick children. We do not ask for forgiveness, for it is too great a thing to ask. We only ask that you hear our acknowledgement. The poison was in our tongues. We are trying now to wash it out. This letter was delivered not to an office, but to Mina's private home. She read it alone in her garden. She read it again and again. The words did not bring joy. They brought a profound, exhausting release. The stone that had lived in her belly for 45 years dissolved. She wept for the young girl she had been, for the lives lost, for the wasted years of a village living under a shadow of its own making. She called her children. We will go to Karima, she said. All of us. The arrival of the Nusupa convoy was unlike anything Karima had ever seen. Giant trucks with drilling equipment, solar panels, prefabricated storage tanks. But it was the sleek, black car that led them that held all eyes. Mina stepped out. She was 70 years old, dressed in a simple, elegant linen dress, her gray hair in neat braids. She wore her mother's bronze bracelet. She was flanked by her 3 accomplished children and a phalanx of grandchildren. The village stood in a silent, trembling mass. They saw not the frightened girl they remembered, but a queen of industry, a matriarch of unassailable power and dignity. The contrast was devastating. Headman Cheeks stepped forward, his head bowed. He began to speak, to formally repeat the apology. Mina raised a hand. She did not look at him. Her eyes scanned the crowd, finding the aged, guilty faces. Jumoke, shrunken and afraid. Ishe, eyes full of a lifetime of regret. Benu's grandson, unable to meet her gaze. She walked past the headman, past the elders, straight to the center of the village, to the old stone-ringed well. It was covered now with a rotten plank. The area around it was barren. "Open it," she said, her voice clear and carrying. Workmen from her team jumped forward, removing the plank. The dark, watching eye was still there, shallow and scummed over. Mina turned to face her people, for they were, in that moment, hers. She held up the vial of clean water from the first letter. "You asked for water," she said. "My company will give it to you. A new well, deep and sweet, an irrigation system for your fields, a clinic with a proper sanitation block. My children will see to it." A hopeful murmur started, but she silenced it with a look. "But this," she said, pointing to the old, poisoned well, "this is the true legacy of Karima. You will not fill it in, you will not hide it, you will clean it out, you will line it with stone, and you will place a cover over it made of clear glass." She paused, letting the image form. "And underneath that glass, you will place this vial of water and the copy of your letter of apology. Every child in this village will be brought here. They will be told the story, not a whispered rumor, but the full story of how fear and lies poisoned your community for generations. They will see the clean water beside the confession. This will be your new village well, a well of memory. So you will never forget that the most dangerous poison does not come from berries, but from an untruth spoken and left to fester." The silence was absolute. It was a sentence far more profound than exile. It was a demand for eternal, visible repentance. It was healing, not as a gentle balm, but as a radical, cleansing surgery. Headman Chike slowly knelt in the dust. One by one, the entire village followed. They did not kneel to her wealth or power. They knelt to the truth, made manifest in the small, fierce woman before them. Amini, daughter of Obasi, finally looked upon her village. The revenge was complete. It was not destruction. It was revelation. It was not their suffering she had sought, but their acknowledgement. And in that acknowledgement, after a lifetime, she found the last, missing piece of her own healing. She nodded to her children. Amma gave a signal. The great solar drill, with a whir of clean, modern energy, began to turn its bit into the earth, not far from the old, cursed site. The sound was the sound of a new beginning, drilled deep through layers of hard, bitter history, searching for the clear, sustaining water that had been there all along.